Alechem, Erev Tov. Welcome back to most of you. Welcome to some of you. It's so nice to see the old faces, but I just took my glasses, so now I'm not going to see most of the faces. No, I like them without. Welcome back, Rachel. Bruchim Nimtzaim. And welcome, Naftali. Baruch Rofei Cholim. I'm so happy to see you. And of course, Elchanan, who's my already standard. They say there was once a guy who wanted to get a job. And he sees that Walmart was posting, they need somebody to come to stock the shelves, to sweep the floor. He said, let me apply. A job's a job. He comes, and he's in the waiting room. There's another person over there. And they're sitting, they're waiting. The CEO comes out. He says, we have one test. It's 10 questions, 10 very hard questions. If you answer them, afterwards, we give you the score, and that will determine if you could be hired or not. They come, they both take the test, and they're sitting near each other. And the guy looks at the question number 1. He has no idea. He can't even read it. Question number 2, 3, 4. He has no clue what the paper says. He peeks from the side of his eye and he sees the person sitting near him is busy scribbling. So he takes his pen and he starts copying the answers. He starts copying. Whatever the other person's writing, he's writing. Time's up. They hand in the papers. Afterwards, they're waiting. He's biting his nails. He's nervous. They call him back and they say, I'm going to tell you, you both did really, really poorly on the exam. Really poorly. But only one of you are being hired. And the one that's being hired is because of the answer they got wrong. And the guy says, well, excuse me, if we got 9 out of 10, the same answers, why is he getting it because he's wrong? I said, sir, let me explain something to you. Every other question, he wrote the answer. The last one, he wrote, I don't know. And you wrote on your paper, neither do I. And that's why you're not getting the job. Some people, when they do something wrong, at the very least, they have the integrity to say, you know what, I messed up. I'm able to say I did something wrong. Unfortunately, you bump into a lot of people who are lacking what we call insight. The ability to look either at their actions or other people's actions and to learn something from it. You see this a lot of times, especially in children. They'll do something, they'll get in trouble for it, they'll do it again. And you look and you say, but didn't you learn anything from the last time? And the answer is no. There's not. It's like, they have a photographic memory, they say, but it's missing the film. Remember when we used to have cameras and you could take pictures? But if there's no film in there, the picture doesn't go anywhere. I want to talk to you a little bit about the story of Purim, but I want to talk to you about the history. Because with a little bit of insight and a little bit of understanding, Achashverosh could have avoided a tremendous mess and chaos that nearly got him and his entire empire destroyed. So let me take you back in history and start over there. If you can, take out your phones, or if you're online, your computer. There were 2 files that were sent out. I'd like to start with the first one, which is a map. Now, this is a map. There are actually 4 maps here attached. I'm going to focus on the middle 2. So if you look at the maps on your phone, you'll see this is the galut, the exile that the Jewish people were going into, is divided really into 2 and then 2 more categories. Why? Because if you recall, we were never actually taken to Persia. We talk about the story taking place in Shushan al-Bira. But how did the Jews get there? So I want to show you, if you look quickly at the first map that you have over here. Elchanan, would you like a map too? Come, I have a map for you. If you look at the first map, it says the ancient empire of the Assyrians. Elchanan here. Melech Ashur. For those of you who remember, remind me who was the king of Ashur. Starts with a Samech. Oh. Close to Sisra, Sancherev. Remember Sancherev, the king of Ashur? He comes and he takes how many of the tribes? Sancherev takes 10. He takes 10 tribes. You'll notice, if you look at the map, Jerusalem's on the left, and the empire, the Assyrian empire, is that what they call crescent, right? Like a half a moon shape. If you go further down, many, many years later, so after the 10 tribes were already left, the king of Israel was exiled with them. We only have Yehuda, a little bit of Binyamin, and the Leviim left Malchei Yehuda in Israel. The second phase of exile is when Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Bavel, of Babylon, comes and takes the Jewish people. This journey is further divided into two because Nebuchadnezzar doesn't take all the Jews at once. He takes them in different steps. Now, talking about history repeating itself, the first group that Nebuchadnezzar comes and takes with him are the children. Why does he take the children? He takes the children. If you've ever watched National Geographics, anytime one male lion takes over another pride, Elchanan, what does he do immediately? He kills all the men, all the cubs, because he can't have competition. When the kings would conquer, they would take the children because those are, number one, our most precious assets. Number two, they're the easiest to groom when they're very little. Take them in, bring them into the culture, and there you go. You have wonderful, outstanding soldiers who are now immersed in your culture. It's very easy. Take 5, 10 years. You erase their memory, and now they become new citizens of your kingdom. And that is what Nebuchadnezzar does. He first comes and takes the children with him. And if you look at the empire, so you see, it's nearly the same as the Assyrian Empire, just smaller. Bavel was not, we always talk about Bavel and the Babylonian Empire. It's actually much smaller than the one before it and the one after it. So we have Nebuchadnezzar. You then have...
Sorry, your sound dropped.
I sound off? Okay, 1 second. I guess now we know it's the right class because it happens at every class. Okay, what about now? Yeah, thank you. I always know I can count on you, Naomi. Thank you. So if you notice, the Sancheriv has a pretty large empire. It shrinks under Nebuchadnezzar. Go down to the next map. Look at the ancient Persian Empire. When we say at the beginning of the Megillah, Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh hu Achashverosh hamolech me Hodu v'yad Kush. He's ruling from, look at the right side of the map, Hodu, which is going to be India, all the way down to the left side, which is bordering with Egypt, Kush, which would be Sudan, Ethiopia, that region. The Persian Empire is huge. A different day for a different lesson of why was the Babylonian Empire so small? Why was the Persian Empire not just so big, but so sustainable? It has to do with the way they had their government structured and the ability for the Persian Empire to allow a certain amount of autonomy to those who were under them instead of one centralized power. But like I said, another conversation for another time. And then the last map I'm not going to touch on, that's for Chanukah. That's when Alexander of Mogdon, Macedonia, comes and takes over. Right? So this is how the Jews get to Bavel. They get there because the first 10 tribes are in Ashur, Assyria. You then have the king of Bavel coming and taking first the children, then the skilled workers and the Talmidei Chachamim, and the only people we know he ends up leaving in Israel, the weak, the poor, those who eventually believe are going to just die out. So that's how the Jews end up in Bavel and then Persia as we know it. Now I want to look with you for a second. If you open up your Navi, it's really Ketubim. So if you have a Tanakh, it's the Ch sound. The Ketubim side, Sefer Daniel. Now you should know Daniel has a very soft place in my heart. My grandfather's name was Daniel, and he wrote a book. It's titled Daniel Ish Chamudot. Daniel, the pleasant person. And one day, God willing, we're going to learn this book. It is the quintessential guide for the Jew in exile. That is the book of Daniel. But for right now, I just want you to open up to chapter 1 of Daniel, where it brings us to the actual exile. So I want to read a few psukim. Bishnat Shalot, Nachon, you did this. Bishnat Shalot Malchut Yehoyakim Melech Yehuda. So it's in the 3rd year of the reign of Yehoyakim, the king of Yehuda. Ba Nebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel. The king Nebuchadnezzar comes to Yerushalayim and he creates a siege around the city. Vayiten Adonai biyado et Yehoyakim Melech Yehuda, and he comes and he captures not just the city but the king. ומקצת כלי בית אלוהים, ויביאם ארץ שנער בית אלוהיו, ואת הכלים הביא בית אוצר אלוהיו. He comes, he captures the city of Yerushalayim, he takes the king as prisoner, along with all the children, and the vessels of the Bet HaMikdash. Now what does he do? He takes the children in, and he renames them. amongst the children that he takes is Daniel. Daniel is renamed to Baltishatzar. Remember that name. Hold on to it. Don't confuse it. So this is how the Jews end up in Bavel. I want to now show you the chronological order of, so how do we get from the king of Bavel, Nebuchadnezzar, to Achashverosh? And what are the kings in between? Specifically, Belshazzar. So unlike Daniel, who we had a tet in there, Belteshazzar, thank you. We're going to look at Belshazzar, the king. For that, I want you to go to the second document you have, which should look like this. Okay, so if you open the file, you have something that looks like this. You sent both out?
The chart?
Which one?
Chronology of Daniel in the PDF.
Okay.
So if you go to the Zoom invitation, you'll see the chronology of Daniel.
And we have the other one as well?
The other one is called Megillat Esther.
Beautiful. Okay, so if you go into the Zoom link, you're going to have, it's called the chronology of the book of Daniel. I'm going to put the dates aside. You can break your heads on a different point of why the dates that we have and the dates that the historians have and the dates that the scholars have don't match up. It's a great question. But if you look at the events, that's where I want to really focus. So you have all the way to the right on this chart, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Bavel. He comes, he takes the first group of Jewish people into exile. Along with them is, if you look at events, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. He takes them in as captive in the third year of Jehoiakim's reign. Then we have Nebuchadnezzar has a fascinating dream, which Daniel interprets. You'll notice there are a lot of parallels between Daniel and Yosef HaTzadik, both the work that they do in the palace as well as their environment and how they react to it. Like I said, another shield for another time. You then have the second set of exilees. So you have the exile of Jehoiakim, which is called the Cheresh Umasger. That is the name of how do you pronounce it? Charash. Cheresh ze, nachon, ma ze charash? Skill. Yafe. It's the people who are highly skilled. By the way, you'll notice most immigration laws and policies, even in the United States, anytime there's an embargo and they don't want immigrants, normally the skilled immigrants are given a pass, very simply because any empire knows these are people that they want because they feel that they will be productive to their society. You find the same thing over here. I'm not telling you right or wrong and not mixing into the politics of immigration, but you find over here something similar, which is Nebuchadnezzar wants the skilled workers first. He wants the people that are either going to be skilled with their hands or with their intellect. So that's Nebuchadnezzar's reign. And then we have the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, and that's really the end of the Jewish stronghold in Israel and Jerusalem. You then have for a short while, the king after Nebuchadnezzar is called Evil Merodach. His name is like it sounds, extremely evil. So if Nebuchadnezzar was cruel, his successor was that much crueler. He rules for a very short period of time. I believe it's a period of 3 years, and is conquered by Belshazzar. Belshazzar takes over. He's going to be one of two main characters for today. He takes over and he reigns for about 50-something years until he himself is murdered. And then let's look at the next chart because it's going to seamlessly take us there. So if you open now the Megillat Esther link, you have the chronology of events in the book of Esther. You sent both or just the one from the sages? Okay, perfect. So if you look at page, I'm going to get you that page.
It's number 14 in the PDF.
Okay.
It says 4.
So it says page 4 on the bottom, but it's page 14 in the PDF. So again, you'll notice we start here with Nebuchadnezzar. It does not here include the two kings that I just mentioned, Evil Merodach and Belshazzar. It jumps immediately to the next king, who you may be familiar with, Koresh, or in English they call him Cyrus the Great. Yeah. Koresh is the one who sends the Jewish people back to start building the Bet HaMikdash. You then have Daryavesh, who is mentioned in conjunction with Koresh, so they rule together at the same time. You then have Koresh on his own, and then the gray boxes where I want to go is Achashverosh. So here it says that Achashverosh is the son of Daryavesh, the first, because if you'll recall, both Esther and Achashverosh have a child, and they name him Daryavish as well. He is Darius II, Daryavish Hasheni. So I guess it's not just us and the Hasidim, but also royalty, where they keep reusing the same names over and over and over again, junior and senior and senior and junior. But that's what we have over here. So I want to look for a second at the story of Purim, and then bring you back 50 plus years to a story that will sound almost like it's a copy and paste. Yes, Yoni. Very good. So you are right. The Gemara has some very interesting questions of, was Achashverosh from royalty or not? And some commentators say yes, but he's from the breakaway, meaning Vashti came from Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babel. Achashverosh came from Madai, the breakaway group that overthrew Babel. And it was similar to, if you recall, in English history, when I think it was Oliver Cromwell, it was called the Glorious Revolution, because you had two different empires marrying each other. And this was very common in Europe in general, where two warring empires would have their children marry. So that, not because they loved each other, this wasn't a romance story. It was simply to bring peace or conquest to both of the nations. So that's where you have Achashverosh does come, according to some opinions, from royalty, but from the royalty that overthrew Vashti's family. Yes? So let's look for a minute into the Megillah. If you can open up your Megillot now, let's look at the beginning. Megillat Esther. Let's look at the first chapter. Vayihi. Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh. And it was in the days of Achashverosh. Our Chachamim tell us every time you see the word Vayihi, it means bad news is coming. Like, give me an example where you have Vayihi. Vayihi b'mei Shvot HaShoftim. If you look at the book of Shoftim, which is a time period of famine, drought, corruption, it starts all the book with Vayihi, and it was. Yeah? If you wanted to say and it was, but it was something joyful, you would always find the word Vihaya. Very good. Vihaya always indicates something happy is going to happen. Vayihi, an indication something bad is going to happen. Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh, and it was in the days of Achashverosh. Hu Achashverosh, this is our Achashverosh, hamolech mehodu v'ad Kush. He rules all the way from Hodu till Kush, like you saw on the map, a huge empire. Sheva ve'esrim u'mea medina, 127 little provinces. Bayamim hahem keshevet hamelech Achashverosh al kisei malchuto, and it was during those days when he was sitting on his throne in the city of Shushan Habira, bishnat shalosh lemalchos. So he waits for 3 years. Why does he wait for 3 years? Chachamim tell us he was not so stupid. He knew that normally whenever there are revolutions and there's a new king, it takes time for the country to get used to leadership. And he wanted to wait until things settled down. The people were happy with him. The changes were good. That's when he throws a party. Bishnat shalosh lemocho, asam mishte lechol sarav avadav. He starts making this beautiful, lavish party for everybody, and he invites all the different ministers from the different counties and medinot. Beharoto et osher kvod malchuto ואת יקר תפארת גדולתו. ימים רבים 80 ומעט יום. And he makes this party. How long does he party for? These people know how to party hard. We have neighbors who, when they start partying at 12, 1, 2, 3, the neighbors start calling the cops. We're talking about over here for 180 days, they're busy partying. And there's liquor, and there's drinking. I want to focus for a second. If you look at the word, ואת יקר תפארת גדולתו. The Gemara tells us, and if you look into Megillah Yod Bet, Amud Aleph, I want to read to you what the party looks like a little bit. Again, Megillah 12, Yud Bet. It's going to be Amud Aleph, the first side. And we're going to start from the beginning and then skip around. In the Talmud. Thank you. Rabbi, that's why I keep you around. In these classes, you're my assistant. If you have Sefaria, you're welcome to open it. Otherwise, you're welcome to listen to the words. Okay. Beharoto et osher kivod malchuto. When he displayed the riches of his glorious kingdom. What riches are we talking about? יפה מאוד. אמר רבי יוסי בר חנינה. רבי יוסי בר חנינה says, מלמד שלבש בגדי כהונה. What clothing was he wearing? He was wearing not just our clothing, the Jewish clothing. He was wearing the clothing of the priests. How do we know that? Because it says, Yakar Teferet Gedulato, that he was wearing the honor and the splendor of the Jewish people. And if you look into the Chumash, and this you have, so open up your Chumash, Shemot Chavchet 28, Pasuk Bet, verse 2. Tell me what it says. It's Parshat Titzaveh, the 28th chapter, the second line. It's describing the clothing of the Kohanim and the Kohen Gadol that they would have to wear in the Mishkan and then Bet HaMikdash. Read the Pasuk. What do you have over there? Again, chapter 28, verse 2. Pasuk 2. What do you have, Elchanan? Read it. Are you in the right Perek? Perek 28. You're in 29. Read 28. 28, go back, and read Pasuk Bet. Slowly. You got it. There. What do you have? Read it loud.
ועשית בגדי קודש לאהרון עצמך לכבוד ולתפארת.
Very good. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu is describing the clothing of Aharon and the Kohanim in the Bet HaMikdash, he calls the clothing of glory and splendor. And that is where HaChachamim take the words Vet Yikar Gedulato as an indication that Achashverosh is not just wearing beautiful clothing, specifically the clothing of the Jewish people, more specifically of the Kohanim. Now, what else does he do? Uvimlot hayamim. Look back into the Megillah. Uvimlot hayamim. When as the days progress, Hamelech brings now the people from Shushan, and he makes a specific party for those who are in his capital city. Chol kapas utchelet. He decorates the place magnificently. He brings out all the most beautiful, exquisite gold. And if you look at Pasuk Zayin, Vashkot bichlei zahav, v'kelim mikelim shonim. And he serves them in all kinds of different dishes. Now, for those of you familiar with the tune of the Megillah, in many Ashkenazi communities, they switch from reading it in the regular tune that we read the Megillah to the tune of Echa. So they'll read it, v'kelim mikelim shonim. And I think I'm off tune because I never grew up in an Ashkenazi community, really. Kelim shonim. Yafeh מאוד. Exactly like that. Why are they reading it like Echa? So let's go back into the Gemara. Vashkot bichlei zahav v'kelim mikelim shonim. The drinks were served in gold goblets, different types. The Gemara asks, mishunim miba'elei. The proper Hebrew word that should have been used here would have been mishunim, meaning diverse, instead of shonim, which also comes from the word of lishanot, to repeat. Yeah, the proper Hebrew would have been mishunim. So our Chachamim tell us, well, Amar Rava, Yatzeta bat kol v'amra lahem. There was a voice from heaven that came out and said, Rishonim kalu mipnei kelim. Achashverosh, you idiot. Your predecessor, Belshazzar, was killed exactly because he used the Klei HaMikdash by his party. And you fool didn't learn anything. Rishonim kalu mipnei kelim, v'atem shonim bahem. You're now going to repeat the same mistake. So when it says v'kelim mikelim shonim, it doesn't mean diverse or different. It means Achashverosh, didn't you learn your lesson in history? Just take a peek in the chronicles of the books of Bavel, Paras, Madai. Learn a little bit of history before you start throwing a party. Because what you're doing will ultimately lead to your downfall, just like it did to your predecessor. So now we have to go back and look at, so what happened to his predecessor? Because where most of us have learned the Megillah time and time again, most of us have not taken the time to learn the story of Daniel, Belshazzar, and that's where I want to take you today. Now I'm going to give us a little bit of leeway. If you look at the book of Daniel, that's where we're going to spend much of our time now. It's a hard book to learn. Elchanan, why is it a hard book to learn? Very good. If you open it initially, the first chapter and a half are in regular Hebrew. But somewhere in the second chapter, when Daniel starts talking about Nebuchadnezzar and the language that they used in Babel, Aramaic, he switches. And he starts writing from there all the way to the end of the book in Aramaic. Now, many people are not fluent in Hebrew, but they can get by with a little bit of help. Many more people are less fluent in Aramaic. It also is a hard read in general, because unlike many of the books, and you'll notice, Daniel, though he was giving prophecy, he's not really part of the prophets. For example, the books of Ezra are part of the books of the Tanakh, whereas Daniel is part of the Ketubim, right? It's part of a different section, because Daniel is writing more of a biography and less of his prophecy. Sure, there are words of wisdom, tremendous wisdom in his books. Yeah. Oh, yafet. So he was not appointed. Yafet. Daniel is not giving prophecy to the people of his time. His contemporary is Ezra, Nehemiah, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Those are not Hananiah, Mishael, but Ezra, Nehemiah, those are the prophets of the time. Daniel is much more writing, almost it feels like a reflective journal of a Jew who not just is in exile, but is very close to the leadership of exile. So I want to walk you into chapter 5 of Daniel. We're going to put aside the first few chapters, which deal with Nebuchadnezzar, Evil Merodach. We're now going to Belshazzar and his party. So we're going to look at Daniel 5, which is going to be chapter 5, verse 1. It is. Now, there's a famous writer, an Irish writer, who he coined a term that that most of us know, but most of us don't know the second half. So I wrote it down because I think it's a beautiful quote. Tell me the quote, okay? Imitation is?
The best form of flattery.
Very good. So most of us know imitation is the greatest form of flattery. But the quote continues. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness. Most people, when they imitate, they're just trying to imitate something that much grander, so much better. So Achashverosh, I told you, he's not new. He didn't come bring any chidushim to the world. He simply did a poorer job at imitating what was done much better before him. We walk in over here to Belshazzar, who's going to be the last of the kings of Babel. After him, the leadership switches over to the kings of Paras and Madai and goes from there. So if you look at Perek He, I'm going to read it to you in English, but it's worth just seeing the text anyway. Belshazzar Malka, maybe I'll read a little Aramaic. Belshazzar Malka Avad Lecham Rav. He makes a party. He throws a banquet for 1,000 of his noblemen. And before the 1,000, he drinks and he tastes wine. And you're going to notice that every time we find wine, we always find problems. I know people will tell you, yeah, I could drink responsibly and I could drink well. Now that Purim's coming up, I can drink and be holy. The answer is no, you can't. No, you can't. Not according to the Torah. Every single time we bump into wine. Tell me the first time we bump into wine. And what happens?
No.
There you go, Noach. What happens to Noach after the flood?
It's too much wine and then the story with this.
Yafeh. The first time Noach, you have to imagine. 40 days, 40 nights, it's raining. For a whole year, he's stuck on the teva. I have to be honest. I live in a house where, thank God, we have children. They are beautiful. I love them. We also have birds. We don't have one bird. We don't have two birds. We have many, many birds. And sometimes by the time the end of the day is over and the kids are sleeping and the birds are still making noise in my ears, that's when I think that if they were kosher, they would be chicken soup. Why? Because it's a lot of noise. And sometimes you just don't have Noach sitting for days and days on ends taking care of not just one bird. He's taking care of the entire humanity, the entire animal kingdom. He comes out, he's tired. He's worn. He's worked hard. Imagine being locked with your family for an entire year. You know how many fighting there would be? He comes out, he plants a vineyard, and he gets drunk. And the shame afterwards that comes from it is absolutely awful. Every time you find drinking, you find problems. That's just the way it works. So what happens? Belshazzar makes a party, but this is a party. He knows how to throw parties. He invited 1,000 people and they start drinking. Not only are they drinking, along with the people he invites, he decides to drink the wine and to bring the gold and silver vessels that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had removed from the Hechal in Yerushalayim, so that the king, his noblemen, his consorts, and his concubines could drink from them. So you have to understand this was a very, very special kind of party. Not only was there a tremendous amount of alcohol, remember Achav, who was an innkeeper? Yeah? So her people were also invited to this party. There were tons of women who were invited to this party, and a ton of things that shouldn't be happening were happening. Now he's drunk. In his drunken stupor, he says, wouldn't it be amazing to show off to everybody? I'm the king of the world. Sorry?
Back in.
Oh, I thought it was our audio. He says, wouldn't it be a great idea to show off to everybody? And you have to understand, he is really, for us, we look at the map, it's a tiny map that he's ruling over. But he's the king of much of the civilized world, at least at that point in history. So he decides to show off. Now, he's not going to brag about his achievements. He's going to brag about, you know what my father is? Yeah, you know those kids? You know what my dad is? I didn't do anything special. I just sit on the couch and I eat popcorn and watch movies. But my dad... So he brings out the kelim of the Bet HaMikdash and he starts using them. He starts drinking them. He starts displaying them in front of everybody. Then they brought out, in Pasuk Gimel, then they brought out the gold vessels that had been removed from the Hechal that was in Yerushalayim, and the king, his noblemen, his consorts, and the concubines drink from them. They drank wines, and they praised the gods of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone while they're busy drinking, and they're thanking all the gods of the gold and the silver. And as he's busy in this drunken stupor, he looks across him, and he sees fingers, and then a hand. And he sees fingers and a hand across on the wall start writing. Now, Chaver, if you start having such hallucinations, please go to your local emergency room. Now, he's not sure. Is it because he's drunk? Or is he seeing something? And the hand starts writing on the wall. And immediately he goes from this drunken, merry, happy stupor to a very serious, terrified person. And he's looking at the wall, and he sees the letters, and he sees the words, but he can't understand what he's reading. So what does he do? At that time, fingers of a human hand emerged and wrote opposite the large candelabrum on the plaster of the wall in the king's palace, and the king saw the hand that was writing it. Then the king's demeanor changed, and his thoughts terrified him. The joints of his hips got loose, and his knees knocked against each other. You ever got scared? Have you ever been so scared that your body starts shaking? This is what's happening to him. He's having literally a panic attack. He is panicking. The king cried loudly or forcefully to bring the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the oracles. His first step is, go bring all the magicians. Go bring all the witchcraft makers. Bring the people who possibly can have an answer to what am I seeing here? What am I reading on this wall? The king spoke, saying to the wise men of Bavel, whoever can read this script and tell me its interpretation will wear purple. Why purple? So we always say that red is the color of kings, but really the right color is specifically from a snail. And I wanted to ask you about the chilazon and snail and tchelet. I think that's a fascinating thought. But the king tells him, I'm terrified. I don't know what this writing is all about. But if somebody can interpret it properly, I promise you, I will let you wear purple. You will be considered aristocracy. You're going to become part of our kingdom. Tell me who else has this experience with dreams, needs an interpreter. Yosef HaTzadik, remember? Yosef is busy wallowing in jail. Paro is busy tripping over his dreams. I don't know what kind of grass they had in Egypt that he was eating, right? But he's having horrifying dreams, and he has a similar promise, which is whoever's going to be able to interpret my dreams, what is he going to be? He'll become Mishneh LeMelech. He'll become second in command. Belshazzar says, please, if anybody knows how to interpret this, I promise you, you're going to, number one, wear the color of royalty, and I'm going to give you a gold necklace that will symbolize that you're part of the aristocracy. The people are looking. Nobody knows. In walks in the queen. So then, here, we have then all the king's men entered. I'm in Pasuk Chet. But they cannot read the script and make the interpretation known to the king. Nobody could read or understand what's happening. The king Belshazzar was terrified, and his demeanor again changed, and his noblemen were confused. Now everybody's scared, because not only is he drunk, but he's scared. And if you've ever seen somebody trapped and scared, they can do very dangerous things. It's why you find anytime the Jewish people go out to war, we always make sure not to do what to the city? Very good. When the Jewish people go to Yericho, and we do lay a siege, we leave an opening for the people to escape, to run away. Because when people feel trapped, they always fight harder. They always fight worse. And here everybody's starting to get really scared. This party of merriment and excitement and drunkenness is suddenly turning into something very scary. The queen, now you have to understand, the Chachamim tell us the queen is not Belshazzar's wife. Rather, it's Nebuchadnezzar's wife, Belshazzar's mother. So think about the old matriarch, right? I know in the West, women have been oppressed for a very long time. I'm not taking away from it. I know very often the West also wants to project that on the East. But if you've ever met real Eastern people, they always have a matriarch. There's one woman, she's the head of the family. She's the one who sets down the rules. Esther, I'm not looking at you. I'm just saying, there's always that one woman who, she's the head of the tribe. You have that over here. The queen steps in and says, Belshazzar, stop. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself. During the time period that your father ruled, he was wise enough to take the Jewish people and bring them close to him and make them his advisors. Unfortunately, Evil Merodach and then Belshazzar were so cruel that they had distanced all of them, in addition to massacring and killing them. The queen says, why don't you go call the wise people from the Jewish people? Bring the servant of Nebuchadnezzar, whose name is Daniel. I'm sure he could help. I'm positive that he can help you. So look at Pasuk Tet. The queen, due to the words of the king and his noblemen, entered the banquet hall. And the queen spoke, saying, O king, live forever. May your thoughts not terrify you, and may your demeanor not be changed. Teraga. Go bring Daniel. They bring Daniel. And I want to skip down to Pasuk 13. So Daniel comes in. And he mocks the king. Then Daniel was brought in before the king. And the king spoke, saying to Daniel, you are Daniel, who is the members of the exile of Yehuda, whom the king my father brought from Yehuda. I've heard about you that you have the spirit of God laying on you. You're a noble person. You're a good person. He's doing what we call in Hebrew chanifa. What's he doing? He's flattering him. Why? Because Belshazzar's assumption is everybody's as arrogant as him. So he thinks that with a few words to boost Daniel's ego, he's going to get him to work for him. He says, don't worry, I'll pay you. I'm going to make you royalty. I'm going to give you gold and silver and a very particular status in society. Just please tell me what's written on the wall. So Daniel answers him. If you look at Pasuk Yud Zayin 17, then Daniel spoke, saying before the king, let your gifts be for you. You're not going to buy me with stupid gifts. If you recall, Elisha says the same thing to Naaman. When Naaman comes to get cured from his tzarat, he also brings a tremendous amount of gifts. And what does Elisha say? Elisha says, I don't need your gifts. You should know, anytime you go to a holy person and the first thing that they require from you is money and a check, you could already know for sure this person is not holy. If in order to speak to that chacham, you need to put down a $10,000 check, it's very simple. You then just know this person is clearly not a chacham. Our leaders never robbed the people from their funds. Quite to the contrary. The leaders were always there to give back to the people, to bless the people. I know that when my husband introduced me to the Kalver Rebbe, he should have a refuah shalema. One of the hallmarks of every single time the Kalver Rebbe traveled the entire globe. When I say the entire globe, the entire globe. Who paid for it? He did, from his own finances. And if you look at any flyer, you can Google this. You'll see it on every flyer. On the bottom, they write, please do not bring us money. The Rebbe does not need your money. He's here to give you blessing, to bring you blessings, to bring you good things, to shower good on you. That's what leadership is. Daniel says, you had some.
Told me he came to the world to give, not to take.
Yeah, he came to the world to give, not to take. Daniel tells the same thing to Belshazzar. He says, let your gifts be for you, and your generous grants give to another. I thank God I don't need your tzedakah. However, I will read the script to the king, and I will make known to him the interpretation. So you should know, Belshazzar, I know what it says. I will help you interpret and understand it, but keep your gifts, keep your flattery. I don't need it. And then he starts telling him very harsh words. He says, you, O king, God, Most High, gave Nebuchadnezzar, your father, the kingdom. We're going to have to study, I told you, the book of Daniel. But Nebuchadnezzar, it's very interesting. They say there's no honor amongst thieves, but there is. There are bad kings and there are bad kings. Nebuchadnezzar, despite his cruelty, is very often given titles of grandeur by the Nevi'im, by the prophets, by the way he's spoken about, what kind of king he is. Daniel says, your father, despite him being a very evil person, he knew there was a God in the world. He knew, in fact, the Gemara tells us something fascinating, that when Nebuchadnezzar was at his height in leadership, he had just built his empire, he was feeling really good. He started to sing praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not to his idols, to our God. His songs were so beautiful that they rivaled those of David HaMelech. So much so, the Gemara continues, it's crazy Gemara. The Gemara says that the angel started saying, you got to stop him. Because if he continues singing, his shirah, his songs, will trump those of David HaMelech. And that's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends an angel who strikes Nebuchadnezzar in his mouth, and he stops singing. He stops singing. Now, if you look, you obviously have to understand this Gemara. Just because he's competition, so that's how we deal with our competition. If he's actually better than David HaMelech, so let him be. It's very simple. The test was, Nebuchadnezzar, you could sing when everything's going really well for you. It's very nice. You're now on top of the world. Life's good. You have a family. You have friends. You have kids. You have a job. You're making it. You know what made David HaMelech special? You know what made his song superior? When does David HaMelech sing? Birocho mipnei Avshalom bino. When he's running away from his own child who wants to kill him. When he's running away from the Pelishtim. When he's running away from Shaul HaMelech. Every single time he has a tzara, when he's in the depths of horribleness, that's when he decides to sing Shirah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Nebuchadnezzar, it's nice that you could sing when things are good. Let me strike you across the face. Let's see if you could continue singing. And ultimately, Nebuchadnezzar fails. That's when he stops. Things are starting to get bad. No thanks. No thanks. But Nebuchadnezzar, he understood there was a creator in the world. Yes, he destroyed the Bet HaMikdash, but he had some dignity. Belshazzar, who are you? You come, you make yourself a party, and what do you do by this party? You desecrate HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not only do you use his kelim, right? These vessels, they're stolen. They're not yours to use. You pour them with wine. You start drinking out of them. And then who do you start blessing? Who did Belshazzar start praising?
The god of gold.
The god of gold, the god of silver, the god of wood. Belshazzar, you want to know what it says on the wall? These are the words it says. Now, I want to write them to you and use this to erase. So if you look at Pasuk, Let's look at Pasuk Chaf Bet.
Right?
So we're still in chapter 5. We're in chapter 6. Okay, we're in chapter 6. We're going to be in verse 20. Let's look at verse 23. Oh, no. It is. No, sorry. We're still in chapter 5. It's going to be verse 23. Yeah, we're going to look at 23 from there. Daniel continues. He says, you've been haughty. You were arrogant, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Instead of praising him, instead of recognizing, yeah, I'm the leader of one of the most powerful empires in the world. But where does it come from? You decided to desecrate HaKadosh Baruch Hu even more. And therefore, if you look at Pasuk 24, because of all this, this hand was sent to you by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're not seeing shadows. You're not crazy. You're not hallucinating. There was a hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that came out and wrote a message to you on the wall. And the message is as following. Look at Pasuk 25. I want to read it to you in Hebrew. In Aramaic. Udina kitava dereshim. This is what was written. Mene, tekel, ufarsin. So you have 4 words written. Mene, tekel, ufarsin. Daniel says, you want to understand what those words mean? Let me explain it to you. Dina pshar milta mene, mena elaha malchutach, vashelama. Mene, Hashem has counted. He's counted the days of your leadership. He's checked every single one of them. Tikel, so in Aramaic and Hebrew, you find that very often the taf and the shin are interchangeable. So if you change that taf into a shin, what word do you get? Shekel, lishkol. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu counted. He counted all your deeds, all your actions, and then he put them to weigh. Remember when they always tell us on Rosh Hashanah that Hashem takes out a moznaim, right? He takes out a scale, similar if you go to the grocery. There's a scale to put your fruits and vegetables on. Now, obviously, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have up in heaven this very big scale set, but it's a certain imagery of there's a scale, it's weighted. Belshazzar, your actions have been piled onto this scale, and you came out with a deficit. You are doing very, very poorly. You're doing so poorly that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has decided, ufarsin, from the word lifros. What is a pusa in Hebrew?
Slice.
A slice. Why is it a slice? A slice of bread, you say pusad lechem. Because you cut. You divided it, you cut it in 2. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has counted and seen your deeds. He's weighed them, and you've come out wanting. And therefore, ufarsin is a double lashon, meaning it's plural. Number 1, he's going to slice it in half. So you're going to lose the kingdom. It is now transferring ownership from Malchut Bavel to Paras Umadai. So not only is it going to be split one way that it's taken away from you, it's also then going to be split into 2. And who's getting the second slice? Paras. So there's an allusion in the word ufrisin to not just being cut, but specifically it's going to your enemies. Now I want to show you for a second. Why was he having such a hard time interpreting what he had on the wall? Daniel comes, he reads it, and he very quickly is able to understand what's written on the wall. Our Chachamim are divided, and I want to take you into Gemara, which actually touches on, for those of you who are in the Sunday morning and Monday class, I'm sure you've been studying, in Avinoam, if he's listening, you've been studying what is really the ancient Hebrew text, the script. Is it the script of Ashur, the Assyrian script? Is it the Hebrew script? Do the letters look the same? Right? Now we know that the Jewish people at this point are speaking by and large Aramaic. It's why the book of Daniel is written in Aramaic. So if the text over here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wrote on his wall is Aramaic, why can't the people decipher it? Right? This is the language of the people. Oh. Yefes. So Rachel has one of the opinions. So I want to show you a few different opinions because they're interesting. I don't need this here right now. If you look into, it's going to be in Sanhedrin Chav Bet. So Sanhedrin 22, Amud Aleph, the first side, all the way towards the beginning of the daf. Okay. So the Gemara is having actually a conversation about the Hebrew script, right? This is, I believe, from your class. For those who are not in the class, this is what the ancient Hebrew script is, right? It's, think of all the fonts you have on your computer, right? So many, many different fonts. You could be writing the same thing, but the font is different. For those of you online, you can see it over here, and maybe we could send it to the class afterwards. So the Gemara is having a conversation of the Torah, the original text. Which script was being used? That's a good conversation. But in conversation of that, right, the Gemara doesn't go like this in straight lines. One conversation leads into the next, into the next. So what's brought up? This story. Let me read to you. Oh, okay. So, okay. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, who is quoting Rabbi Elazar Hamodai, maintained that there was no time when the Jews were not familiar with the Ktav Ashuri, the Ashuri script. If so, he must explain why not even the Jews of Belshazzar's court were unable to read the handwriting on the wall. Okay, so in conversation, they're talking about, was the original script Ktav Ivri, Ktav Ashuri? Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar maintains that no, the Jewish people, they were familiar with the script of Ashurit. So the question is, so if they were familiar with the script, why couldn't they read what was written on the wall? Right? You have thousands of people here in this room by the party. Not one person understands what's written on the wall. So according to some Chachamim, they say, yeah, very simply, because it was written in Ktav Ivri. Here in Bavel, they read Ktav Ashuri, the Assyrian script. But the writing on the wall was in Hebrew. It was in the ancient Hebrew script, and that's why most of the people couldn't read it. They needed Daniel, who was from the Jewish nation, to be able to say, oh, I know that. I recognize those letters. I know that script. But the other Chachamim argue, they say, no, it's not true. The Jews always had the same script, and it was Ktav Ashurit. Okay, so then how do you explain why they couldn't understand what was written? So I want to show you 3 different reasons of possibilities. Rabbi Shimon damar ktav ze lo nishtana. So Rabbi Shimon says the script never changed. Mai lo kalchin ktav al mikra. So then what possible explanation we have? Number 1 is it was written in what we call atbash. So most of you are familiar with regular gematria, which is aleph is in numerical value 1, bet is
2.
So we have a different system also, which is where the letters get switched. So the first and last letter get paired, second to last and second. That's why it's called atbash. So aleph is the first letter. What's the last letter? Taf. Bet is the second letter. What's the second last? Shin. You understand? So this is a coding message. They say it was written in atbash. So let me show you how it was really written. If that's the way it was, this is what they saw on the wall.
And now for those of you in the Hebrew class, you're going to see the Rabbanit has nicer handwriting than me.
Yeah, but I don't know how to write block letters. I only know how to
I
write
tell them
script.
that every day.
Also, I don't know how to write the block.
I tell them every class.
Yeah? Okay, so at least we have the same. Okay. Okay. So this is what he saw on the wall. You understand? This is not decipherable. It doesn't mean anything in any language, not in Hebrew, not in Aramaic. But if you use our decoding system, are you able to see it? There. Oh, there's the camera. Okay.
That's the recording.
Okay. Yes. If you use the atbash system, this then becomes a mem, right? A nun, an aleph, a mem, a nun, an aleph, mene, tekel, this is an aleph, So it has to be the taf. Remember that one you knew? Yeah? Okay. Tekel u sin. Yeah, this is samich. Okay, I did it right the first time, right? Okay, that would be the decoding. So our Chachamim tell us it wasn't because they couldn't read Aramaic. Everybody could read Aramaic. Simply, not everybody knew our decoding system. So they needed somebody like Daniel to look at it and say, wait, it's a message, it's a code. You think HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to make it so easy for you? You need to decipher it. So that's one explanation. Another one is what Rachel said. I'm going to show you the other one. The next one would be like this.
Just the first two words.
1 second. Oh, so it's not so much, everyone knows this code. Now you know it too. The problem is not everybody knew that this is how they have to interpret it. Okay? According to Shmuel in the Gemara, he tells us no, that wasn't the code. It was much simpler than that. That instead of writing it across like you would normally read, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was playing the Asian game. Anyway, we're in the Middle East that stretches out. He said, you got to read a little bit differently. So here, Belshazzar is trying to read across. Across, it doesn't mean anything. But if you read it downwards, so that's very easy. Now it says, Meneh, Tekel, Ufarsin. Right? The third way is very interesting, which is, do we have time for a third one? Yeah? Where's my little wiper? Okay, the third and last one.
It's going to be a parallelogram.
Yeah, I'm not that good at math. It's going to have to be something a little simpler.
Who said parallelogram? Who's that?
$1 for one guess going once.
Oh, Henya, how do you know what a parallelogram is? They tell you that in yeshiva?
I have to study it for spelling bee.
Here we go.
I think that would be pi, resh, lamed. Ayin, lamed, lamed.
Okay, this one's for Henny. So this was HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He was just messing around with Belshazzar. What he did was, when we were younger, do you remember there was a language? It was called the Bopit language. So you had to add the OP to every consonant and leave the vowels. So I'm going to use Elchanan's name. You would say, instead of Elchanan, you would say E, lap, kap, hap, einap, einap. Yeah. Now, nobody knows what you're saying. They used to have other languages, ridiculous languages. This is one of them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the original language decoder, where what he did was he switched the first two letters. Okay? So now, instead of it saying mineh, you see? 1 second, it's supposed to say, it's completely backwards. Hold on. I think I got it. Yeah, no, it's supposed to be nun. I got it, you see? I helped HaKadosh Baruch Hu with this. I made it even more different. Nun. Yeah, no, it is. Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, that's another opinion. Hold on, I'm showing you another opinion. I didn't realize there were 4 opinions. Okay. Yeah, look. No, I'm not going to show you the other one. Okay, this is Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan says HaKadosh Baruch Hu just wrote backwards. Yes? The last opinion of Rav Ashi is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu switched them. So instead of it saying mineh, it said nimeh, where the first 2 letters were switched. Regardless of any of these opinions, and taking all of them into consideration, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending Belshazzar a message. Yeah. He could have just written it in a way that Belshazzar would understand. Hakadosh Baruch Hu wanted to scare him. This was a scare tactic. He sees something, and he sees something that he can't decipher. And that's very scary. He knows there's a message. He's groping at something. And he needs to be humbled to go bring that servant. You know the ones that you brought in shackles? And you made them wait at the rivers of Bavel while Israel was flowing with Jewish blood? Those are the people you're going to have to now submit yourself to. Get down on your hands and knees. Promise them all the wealth and gold and silver because you need their services now. You're going to need them to help you calm down. You're going to need them to help understand what is this message that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to get to me. And Daniel tells him, look, Belshazzar, you were a fool. You had a role model like your father that you could have followed. Keep the vessels of the Bet HaMikdash safe. Rule over the Jewish people. But you became haughty. You know why you became haughty? Belshazzar became haughty because he didn't learn Tanakh properly. Like many Jews. He didn't know how to learn Tanakh. What do I mean he didn't know how to learn Tanakh? If you look into the Navi Yirmiyahu,
So it's in the prophets.
so it's going to be in the prophets, in the Nevi'im. Look at Yirmiyahu Chafei, so that's chapter 25. Pasuk Yod Bet, the 12th verse. If there's one Navi we have to learn, Yirmiyahu, his entire life is begging the Jewish people, do teshuvah, this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to come. It happens, and they still hate him. And as history's unfolding, he's still asking the people, do teshuvah, do better, be better. And ultimately, throughout the entire destruction, you find that who's the prophet they turn to come walk down Al Naharot Bavel? It's not all the false prophets who told them, no, things are going to be good. Kill Zechariah, kill your Nevi'im. Yirmiyahu Hanavi is, when you look at a quintessential leader, he's the leader who nobody listens to. And yet, because he knows he has a message of truth, he doesn't care to go back over and over and over again to be the messenger. You find in the Navi, Yirmiyahu, he tells the Jewish people that they're going into exile. Chapter 25, Pasuk Yud Bet. Vaya. Oh, so let's go back a few sentences. To Pasuk Chet, the eighth Pasuk. Lachen, he's giving the Jewish people Musar. I've come to you, I've begged you to do teshuvah, change your ways, be better, do different. You haven't listened. Look at Pasuk Zayin. V'lo shamatem elai nu'um Adonai. You didn't listen. Leman hachiseni b'maaseh yedechem l'ra lachem. You've done so much awful, so much evil to each other. Lachen, therefore, ko amar Adonai tzavot, yan asher lo shematem et dvarai, because you haven't listened to me, hineni sholech v'lakachti et kol mishpachot tzafon. I'm going to come. Lo aleinu, today we're dealing with a few hostages, and we know how gut-wrenching it is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I will come, and I will take the entire nation. I'm going to start with the children. I'm going to start with your precious loved ones. And ultimately, I'm going to take everybody. I'm going to take you all. And I'm going to send him to my... Where are you going to go to be hostages, those children? To my servant, Nebuchadnezzar. This is very stinging, this pasuk. Not only the Jewish people who are known as B'ni Bechori Yisrael, Atem Nikraim Banim, we are the children of Hashem. Hashem says, you? What kind of children are you? I have a faithful servant. You know who my faithful servant is? The one who's going to murder and massacre and kill Nebuchadnezzar. He's going to come. והביאתים אל הארץ הזאת, ועל יושביה, ועל כל הגויים האלה, סביב, וחרמתם, ושמתם לשמה ולשרקה, ולחרבות עולם. Nebuchadnezzar is going to come, and he's not going to just destroy Yerushalayim and the Bet HaMikdash. He's going to destroy the dignity of the Jewish people. We're going to be la'ag va'keles b'chol hagoyim. We're going to be a mockery. I think this hits home very hard. where when the Jewish people don't listen to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we don't do what's right, we become a mockery to the other people. They sweep the floors with us. They see us as weak. They see us as victims. They see us as people who can be taken advantage and hurt in ways that are unimaginable. And the words are harsh. והעבדתי מהם כל ששון וכל שמחה, כל חתן וכל כלה, כל ריחיים ואור נר. All the beautiful sounds that used to fill the streets of Yerushalayim, of the children playing, and the brides and the grooms, and the industry, the people milling around. והייתה כל הארץ הזאת לחרבה, לשמה, ועבדו הגויים האלה את מלך בבל 70 שנה. And they're going to go into exile, and they're going to serve the king of Bavel for how many years? For 70 years. We know that the Jewish people were determined to be in Galut for how many years? 70 years. Why? Look at the next pasuk a minute. Vaya, what did we say? Vaya is, and it will be a Lashon Simcha. So unlike Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh, which we said was Vayihi Lashon Tsar, pain, Vaya, something joyful is going to happen. After these 70 years of destruction, Kimlot 70 shana, efkod al melech Bavel, v'al hagoy hahu num Adonai. Don't think those oppressors for 1 minute are going to go off scot-free. El nekamot Adonai. El nekamot Ofia. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, yes, I need to send you into exile. I'm not going to leave you there forever. After 70 years, I will bring you home. I will return you to the land of Israel. I will return Israel as a nation back to its glory. And I promise you, those who have hurt Am Yisrael, and I hope they're listening to my shiur tonight, those who hurt the Jewish people, erdof oivai vasigem velo ashuv ad kalotam. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, I will go, I will chase after them, and I will not come home before I destroy and decimate and kill every single one of them. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises us. But Belshazzar clearly didn't learn Navi. Or he failed math. Henny, he clearly didn't know what parallelograms were. He miscalculated. He, for whatever reason, he thought that the 70 years were up. And look, the Jewish people are still in exile. And that's why he celebrates. He celebrates because he realizes, wow, the God of the Jewish people, he forgot about them. You know, sometimes when I go home from school, I see these kids who are sitting on the lawn right next to the school. Shem Yishmor. Dismissals at 1:30. I pass them at 4:30. They're still sitting out there, pulling out grass, writing on their iPads. I say, whose child is this that the parent forgot to pick up? Hashem Yishmor. Belshazzar says, Hashem forgot about you. And let me poke your eyes out and celebrate. I want to share with you the end of Belshazzar. If you look into Shir HaShirim Rabbah, the 3rd chapter, the 4th verse. It's not in your book. So on the verses, Al Mishkavi Balelot. Yeah, it's obviously a midrash. It's not the actual meaning of Shlomo HaMelech, who was many, many years before this happened. The midrash tells us that it's talking about the night over here with Belshazzar and Daniel. After Daniel tells him the story and the interpretation, Belshazzar is terrified. He bestows Daniel with all the honor. He gives him the purple robes, the clothing, and the golden necklace. And he's terrified. So he tells all the guards, don't let anybody into the kingdom. Nobody's allowed to leave. Nobody's allowed to come. I don't know when this great God is going to come take revenge on me. And he goes into a terrible panic. And he's scared and he's angry and he can't breathe. And he says, I need to go out and clear my head and get some air. And he leaves his palace and he goes out through the front gate to just clear his mind a little, to regain somewhat some of his senses. The problem is he comes and he wants to come back into the palace doors, and who does he meet? 2 of his guards. One is named Daryavish, the other one is named Koresh. And they say, who's there? He says, it's me, the king. He said, sorry, orders from the king. Nobody can come in tonight. He said, but I'm the king. It's Belshazzar. They say, sorry, orders from the king. Anybody that comes to the door and claims he's the king, we should kill him. And just like that, they take the huge chandelier that was hanging with all the candles and they throw it at his head. And that is the end of Belshazzar. And the same night, he has a quick and horrible end that comes to him. And then we have the story of Daryavish and Koresh, who do let the Jewish people start going back up. And then comes Achashverosh, the fool. Now, the Gemara is divided if Achashverosh was really intelligent or he was really foolish. I'm telling you the fool. Why? Because he didn't learn from history. Because had he just taken the time to open up, forget about the Tanakh, just open up the chronicles of Bavel, of Paras, Umadai. Look 3 generations back of kings and see what happened. Yes, the Jewish people were meant to be in exile. Sure. The Jews were sent there by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But you as the king over them, you also have to be machnia. You also have to be humble in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have to recognize, sure, I was bestowed the honor of having the Jewish people in my exile. Let me treat them properly. Let me be good to them. What does Achashverosh do? He takes literally a page from Daniel, and he says, if I wanted to create a party of horrors, what would it look like? And he goes ahead and creates the exact same party. He makes thousands of people from all different cities come. They're all getting drunk. He wears the clothing of the Kohanim. He brings out the kelim of the Bet HaMikdash. And ultimately, he brings his own destruction because he doesn't have the ability to learn a little bit of history. And I think for us, it's important. I want to end with a story. I have 5 minutes. They once brought Rav Lau, so not the father of Lau, the famous picture of a little child during the Holocaust holding his hands up over here with the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, all around him. It's a famous picture. That's the Rav Lau, Rav Yisrael Meir Lau, who then later came to Israel and became the chief rabbi. They wrote a beautiful memoir about him, both in Hebrew and in English. I highly recommend you read it. They once brought him to a Holocaust memorial ceremony at Yad Vashem in Israel. And they asked him to give some words, right? Some words of wisdom. And he said, people always ask him, what did the world learn from the Holocaust? Never again, never again. He said, this morning I was sitting and having coffee, and I took out the newspaper. You know, if this was like a Gedolim story, they would have to edit it out, and somehow he took out a Gemara and he found it. But it's not true. It's a story about a human being who was great, so he was allowed to have a newspaper. He said he looked at the newspaper, and on the first page, flashed on the whole cover, was politics. Turns to the next page, sports. The third page, all kinds of different places that you could go shopping and the sales and things you could buy and things you could sell. He said on page 65, on the top left corner, there was a tiny little article buried inside. Buried meaning you wouldn't have even found it. Of a very young child who was emaciated. It's a famous picture of a child in Africa who is so emaciated that you can see already all the vultures in the background because they're waiting for the child to drop dead and to die. This picture was so famous. It was one of, if you look at, I believe, a few years ago, the Times Magazine came out with 100 most famous pictures in the last century. This was one of them. Unfortunately, the photographer who took the picture lived with so many demons afterwards from seeing such a scene, and the only thing he was able to do was observe and document, but not actually do anything. He unfortunately took his own life, this photographer. But you look at this image, and then there was a small article about famine happening in different underdeveloped countries and how young children were starving to death. That is the famous picture. This is the picture. It is jarring to see, where again, you see a little child. I have to pick it up over here. Yeah, you know this picture? A little child who's about to die. He says, you asked me what we learned from our history. He said, my answer to you is that humanity learns nothing. Because how could it be that we're living in the 2000s and it takes 20 pages in because politics and sports and fashion and design and all kinds of other things are more important than a young child dying from famine? We're not talking about a marginalizing issue. We could all agree that famine is a world issue, something that human beings on a basic level should want to tackle. And he said, you asked me what people learn from history? The answer is nothing. Human beings, over and over again, we make museums and we make memorials and we make days of fasting and days of remembrance and we blow sirens. I'm telling you, those are all really good things. But if we don't have the ability to learn from our history, history is bound to repeat itself over and over and over again. The names change a little bit, the characters change a little bit, but it's going to be the same story. And I'm looking at Am Yisrael and saying, we're living in a time where if we want to write the present and future differently, then we have to look at our past. We have to look and very sensitively say to ourselves, what are the things that worked? What are the things that didn't work? And if we're going to keep, I believe it was Albert Einstein who said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I didn't expect Achashverosh to be any more intelligent than Belshazzar. I do expect the Jewish people to be more intelligent. And today, first, we have to take care of our family, and then we could take care of the nations of the world. And it doesn't mean that we want to neglect the world. Simply, the Jewish people have to go back. It says, Zechor Yimot Olam, right, in Ha'azinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu is leaving the Jewish people, he says, reflect on your past. Binu shno dor vador. Try to comprehend the events that happened before you came to this world. You don't remember? Very good. Sha'al avicha v'yagedecha. You have parents. We're not orphans. Hen lo am alman. We are not a nation of orphans. The Jewish people, we always talk about Chacham Faors, the Jewish people have a memory, the memory of Israel. We don't come from nowhere. We come from somewhere. And we're heading towards something. But in order for Am Yisrael to be successful, both on the ground, and I'm wishing all the soldiers and all the hostages and all of Am Yisrael to be able to come home in peace, but not to come home until we took the history lesson and we turned it not into a memorial and a plaque and a day of remembrance and crying, but a lesson of education so that our future is brighter, so that our future is better, so that when Am Yisrael comes to a place where we're stable and we're thriving, we're then going to be able to go to the world and say, Chevra, it's not about us. Our redemption starts with us, but it doesn't end with us. There's an entire world out there that's waiting for us. And I'm asking you, don't be afraid to look back to find good and better solutions. We can learn from the things that worked, and we can learn from the things that don't work, so that Be'ezrat Hashem, we can walk forward to an Or Chadash, Al Tzion Ta'ir. There should be a new beautiful light, Be'ezrat Hashem. I want to thank you all for coming to learn with me. Next week, Be'ezrat Hashem, so if we talked about what happened now before the story of Purim, there's going to be Purim, and then we're going to talk about, so what happens afterwards? So what happens to the Jewish people in Paras, Madai, Yerushalayim, Bet HaMikdash HaSheni? I'm welcoming you all to please come and join us. And I want to thank all of you on the screens from all the different places in the world, whether you're from California, New York, the other side of the pond. Thank you so much for being with us, and a Laila Tov.